So, the rumors are heating up, and this time, they're not just hype. A mysterious return is being teased for Money in the Bank 2025, and no, it's not Dean Ambrose. It's someone we haven't seen in a WWE ring in years. Someone who walked away from the spotlight at their peak, and who might be coming back to take what they believe still belongs to them. I'll reveal exactly who that is later in this video, but first, let's break down what we know. Money in the Bank 2025 is happening on June 8 at 4:30 a.m., and it's available exclusively on Netflix. But if you don't have a Netflix subscription, don't worry, I'm covering the entire event live right here on this channel. From match results to surprise returns, you won't miss a thing. So, if you haven't already, hit subscribe and turn on the bell notification, because trust me, you're not going to want to miss what's coming. Now let's get into it. The big question on everyone's mind heading into Money in the Bank is this: who's going to control the future of WWE? Because this isn't just about the briefcase. This year's MITB feels different, like it's a setup for a major shift in the power structure. And let's talk about the most unpredictable factor, the mystery return. Sources are reporting that a former WWE champion, someone who left the company abruptly, is planning to make their comeback during the men's MITB match. The identity isn't confirmed, but clues are pointing toward a former Nexus leader who's been quietly training for a return. Yes. You heard that right. Could Wade Barrett be lacing up the boots again? If he does return, it won't be as a commentator. It'll be as a threat. Now, before we go deeper into the men's match, let's shift focus to the women's Money in the Bank. Initially, all signs pointed to Rhea Ripley walking out with the briefcase. She's dominant, focused, and on a roll. But over the last few weeks, that momentum has shifted. Injuries. Distractions. Internal feuds. Rhea's odds are dropping. Now, two other names have emerged as frontrunners, Liv Morgan and Lyra Valkyria. Liv has the fan support. Lyra has the sleeper potential. One of these two women could walk away with the contract, and if they do, history is on their side, because the women's MITB contract has an undefeated cash-in record. Every single woman who's held that briefcase has become champion. Who do you think will win? Drop your predictions in the comments right now. Now let's pivot to one of the most personal feuds developing quietly, Damian Priest vs. Santos Escobar for the United States title. This rivalry hasn't exploded yet, but it's simmering beneath the surface. Escobar has been quietly stacking wins, and Priest is spread thin, caught in Judgment Day politics. I'm calling it now, Escobar shocks everyone and walks out as U.S. champion, possibly setting up a future feud with Dragon Lee or even Carmelo Hayes. And speaking of shockers, how about this tag match? John Cena and Logan Paul vs. Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. The build-up has been chaotic, and if this match ends up in the main event, expect interference. Maybe not a full cash-in attempt, but definitely chaos. Cena's return always draws drama, and Logan Paul attracts controversy like a magnet. And now, let's get back to the big one. Men's Money in the Bank. The favorite going in? Seth Rollins. He's got the pedigree, the momentum, and the crowd. But he's also got a target on his back. Because CM Punk hasn't forgotten that Rollins mocked his injury. And if Punk shows up at MITB, he won't come alone. Imagine this, Rollins is inches from the briefcase. The lights cut out. And standing on the ladder across from him? Braun Breaker, with a steel chain wrapped around his fist. But it doesn't stop there. What if the man who returns isn't Punk? Or Ambrose? Or anyone you expect? What if it's Bo Dallas, returning as Uncle Howdy, finally stepping out of the shadows of the Wyatt legacy to claim the one thing he was denied, a future? Think about it. A dark horse return. A blackout interference. An unannounced fourth man who doesn't want the contract, he wants to end careers. And if Seth Rollins loses because of that, who benefits? LA Knight. Solo Sikoa. Maybe even Gunther, if he cashes in post-match and claims his first world title. This year's Money in the Bank isn't just about who climbs the ladder fastest. It's about who survives the chaos. So, let's wrap it up. Who will win the women's MITB match? Will Cena and Logan hold it down, or crumble under the pressure? And most importantly, who's returning at MITB? Is it Wade Barrett? Bo Dallas? Someone we're not even talking about? Let me know your predictions in the comments below. And don't forget, I'll be giving live match updates, return confirmations, and behind-the-scenes news during Money in the Bank, only on this channel. So hit subscribe, and I'll see you June 8th. Thank you, and get ready. Because something wicked is coming back to WWE. Dean Ambrose just signed with AEW again. Wait. That's what everyone thought, until last night. Because at Money in the Bank 2025, in one of the most unexpected moments in WWE history, Dean Ambrose returned. No build-up. No theme song. No cryptic vignettes. Just a hoodie, a ladder, and chaos. And here's the real shocker, he didn't just return. He won the whole thing. That's right, after being gone for nearly 5 years, Ambrose didn't just walk through the door. He kicked it off the hinges, climbed to the top, and now holds a guaranteed shot at any WWE title. But how did WWE pull this off without a single leak? Why was Seth Rollins the first person Ambrose stared down after grabbing the briefcase? Let's break it all down, because this return changes everything. Dean Ambrose just won the Money in the Bank briefcase. Let that sentence sit for a second. If you'd said that out loud 48 hours ago, anyone who follows pro wrestling would have laughed in your face. Not because they doubted Dean Ambrose's talent. Not because they didn't miss him. But because that wasn't even a possibility. He was Jon Moxley now. AEW's warhorse. The brawler. The backbone of a rival brand. He had just re-signed with Tony Khan's company. That was public. Official. Done. But then came Money in the Bank 2025. A night already stacked with title matches and high-stakes drama. Cody Rhodes defending the undisputed WWE Championship. A mid-ladder match featuring the industry's top climbers, Ricochet, LA Knight, Carmelo Hayes, Finn Balor, and a surprise entrant billed only as TBA. The audience expected something flashy. Maybe a returning NXT star. Maybe Logan Paul. Maybe some cross-promotional stunt. But they didn't expect this. Because nobody saw it coming. No cryptic vignettes. No hype package. No trademark siren echoing through the arena. Just a hooded figure stalking through the crowd, stepping over the barricade, and grabbing a ladder like he owned the place. It wasn't until the camera zoomed in, until the hood slipped just enough to reveal the jawline and scruff, that the crowd gasped in real time. Dean Ambrose. Not Jon Moxley. Dean Ambrose. Back. In WWE. In the middle of the Money in the Bank match. And he wasn't there to wave at the crowd or play nice. He came in swinging. Super kick to Hayes. Dirty deeds to Ricochet. Suplex onto a ladder. A steel chair shot so stiff it left Balor twitching. The same man who once walked out of WWE in silence had returned through sheer violence. And then, like a ghost reclaiming his name, he climbed. Each rung was a story. Each step a question unanswered. And at the top of the ladder, staring down from the rafters like the return of a myth, he unhooked the briefcase. In less than 10 minutes, Dean Ambrose didn't just return. He rewrote the script. This wasn't a nostalgia pop. This wasn't a cameo. This was a hostile takeover. Let's be clear, what happened last night wasn't supposed to happen. Dean Ambrose left WWE in 2019 in a cloud of quiet resentment. He refused their creative, refused their scripts, refused their system. He went on podcasts. He told his truth. And when he landed in AEW, he thrived. Became world champion. Headlined pay-per-views. Lit up the hardcore scene. Built his name brick by brick, this time on his terms. So when the news broke last month that Moxley had extended his AEW contract, fans locked in that reality. He wasn't coming back. Not now. Maybe not ever. And then last night detonated like a pipe bomb. The most shocking part? WWE kept it airtight. Think about that. In an era where flight manifests leak, surprise returns are spoiled by airport photos, and arena workers post spoilers before the lights even dim, WWE brought Dean Ambrose back without a single leak. Not a rumor. Not a whisper. Not even a Reddit post. That silence made the moment even louder. It made the crowd explode like they were watching something impossible. Because in a way, they were. You could feel the moment land in real time. Go back and watch the clip. The camera doesn't zoom in immediately. There's a 3-second pause. Enough time for the crowd to piece together the body language. The movement. The slow reveal. And when the hoodie dropped, boom. You can see grown men jump out of their seats. Fans in Ambrose merch from 2017 screaming like he just resurrected. The sound wasn't just loud, it was stunned. We've seen big returns before, Cena, Punk, Edge. But this was different. This wasn't announced. This wasn't telegraphed. This was a breach. A break in the simulation. An ambush on reality. For the first time in a long time, the WWE Universe witnessed something it didn't see coming. Something real in a scripted world. Dean Ambrose doesn't just win matches. He dismantles expectations. He's never been about pageantry. Never played the safe company guy. So when he held that MITB briefcase in his hands, not with a smirk, not with a stare, but with zero expression, it meant something else entirely. He wasn't back for nostalgia. He wasn't here to sell t-shirts. He came back to wreck the structure. Now he holds the most unpredictable item in wrestling, a contract for any title, anytime, anywhere. And here's the catch, Dean Ambrose has never been predictable. He could cash in on Roman Reigns. He could ambush Seth Rollins on Raw. He could walk into NXT and take the title just to make a point. Or he could hold it hostage for a year and burn the whole briefcase on live TV. Because if there's one thing we learned in that moment, it's that this isn't the same Dean Ambrose who left. This one is colder. Meaner. Smarter. And he knows we're watching. One final note before we dive deeper into the night. After unhooking the briefcase, Dean Ambrose didn't celebrate. He didn't pose. He didn't slap the briefcase like most do. He just turned. And waiting at the bottom of the ladder was Seth Rollins. They didn't say a word. Didn't move. Just stared. It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't rage. It was something else. Something unsettled. Something personal. You could feel the arena hold its breath. This wasn't nostalgia. This was unfinished business. So how did this all happen with zero leaks? Why was Seth the first one Ambrose acknowledged? And what does this mean for the rest of the WWE roster? That's exactly what we're breaking down in this video. From backroom secrecy to AEW drama, from Shield history to WrestleMania speculation. This is the return that changes everything. And we're just getting started. The last time Dean Ambrose appeared on WWE programming before Money in the Bank 2025, he left through the crowd, just as he entered it last night. But back then, it wasn't as a returning legend. It was as a man burned out, fed up, and ready to walk away from the machine that made him. April 2019. The Shield had one last reunion show, promoted as the Shield's final chapter. Dean Ambrose was leaving WWE. Everyone knew it. It wasn't kayfabe. He had let his contract expire, had turned down every extension WWE threw at him, and walked away with zero regrets. No send-off promo. No dramatic farewell speech. Just a fist bump with Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, and then he was gone. What happened next wasn't just a career pivot. It was a reinvention. Jon Moxley was born on May 25, 2019, the moment he showed up at AEW's inaugural event, Double or Nothing. He came through the crowd again, but this time he wasn't part of a trio. He was alone. Wild. And hungry. The second he dropped Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega in the ring that night, fans knew they weren't just watching a debut, they were witnessing a jailbreak. Moxley's AEW run didn't just make headlines. It carved out a new mythology. In AEW, he didn't play the lunatic fringe. He was something more grounded and more dangerous. A man who wanted to fight every night and didn't care if it left him bloodied. That first year, he fought through barbed wire, thumbtacks, exploding rings, and light tubes. He didn't just embrace the violence, he lived in it. By early 2020, Moxley captured the AEW World Championship by defeating Chris Jericho at Revolution. It was a message to the industry, this wasn't just a rebound. He wasn't the guy WWE failed to book properly. He was a legitimate top-tier star. Over the next 3 years, Moxley became AEW's most reliable main eventer. When injuries or suspensions rocked the company, he stepped up. When others crumbled under the pressure of live mics and crowd unpredictability, he thrived. He became the de facto ace of the company. Not always holding the title, but always being the guy the company could turn to when everything else was falling apart. Then came 2023. Moxley had just finished a third run as world champion. The AEW locker room had shifted. CM Punk was out. New Japan partnerships were in. And Moxley found himself in a new role, part champion, part mentor, part monster. He joined the Blackpool Combat Club, mentored Wheeler Yuta, and bled more times on weekly TV than most wrestlers do in a career. At times, it felt like he was testing how far he could go before his body gave out. He never flinched. But around late 2024, something changed. Not publicly. Not in his interviews. But in his tone. He stopped doing media. He stopped cutting long promos. His matches grew shorter, more brutal, more mechanical. It felt like he was conserving something. Fans speculated maybe he was injured. Others said he was just burned out. But when the news broke in February 2025 that Moxley had signed another multi-year deal with AEW, everyone relaxed. He wasn't going anywhere. That's what we all believed. But that belief was built on a lie, or at least a distraction. Because now we know the truth. While Moxley was still bleeding in AEW rings, Dean Ambrose was quietly being resurrected. If that sounds like a contradiction, that's because it is. This wasn't a typical wrestling move. Most wrestlers jump promotions with a press release or a shocking debut. This was a covert operation. If Ambrose re-signed with AEW, then either something changed in the weeks that followed, or that deal was never as solid as it seemed. Let's assume for a moment that the deal was real. That makes his WWE return even more mystifying. How did WWE pull this off without AEW's legal team throwing the brakes on it? Were they aware? Was this part of some behind-the-scenes handshake we haven't uncovered yet? Or did Ambrose negotiate an early exit under the radar? There's another possibility, too. Maybe the AEW extension was never signed. Maybe it was a smokescreen. Wrestling journalism isn't bulletproof. Sometimes leaks are planted. Sometimes silence is weaponized. Maybe Ambrose knew this return would only work if no one even suspected it was on the table. Whatever the truth, here's what's clear: Dean Ambrose didn't just spend 5 years wrestling somewhere else. He sharpened himself into something unrecognizable. In WWE, he was intense, sure. He was unpredictable, yes. But he was also filtered. Sanitized. He played the role they gave him. Occasionally, he broke the mold. His feud with Seth Rollins after the Shield imploded still resonates. But he never fully escaped the box. In AEW, he shattered the box. He stopped performing and started fighting. His promos were grittier, less polished, and more real. His matches were ugly in the best way. Fans didn't chant his name because he was cool. They chanted it because he was raw. Honest. Dangerous. Now he's brought all of that back with him. And here's the twist, WWE may finally be ready for him. Triple H is now steering the ship. The company isn't as scripted. Promos have loosened up. Matches are given room to breathe. A return like this wouldn't have worked 5 years ago. It would have been buried under goofy skits or tone-deaf booking. But now? Now it works. Dean Ambrose, refined by 5 years in the fire, returning at full force into a company that's finally willing to let him be what he was always meant to be, himself. And fans know it. That's why the pop was different. That's why people are still trying to wrap their heads around it. This wasn't just a return. This was a merging of two worlds. Jon Moxley didn't vanish. He just took off the mask. Dean Ambrose didn't die. He just went underground. And now, they've collided in a way no one saw coming. This chapter of Ambrose's story isn't a reset. It's a fusion. He's the lunatic fringe with sharper edges. The rebel with real scars. The wild card with a world of grudges. And now that he's holding the briefcase, every champion in WWE has a target on their back. Because this isn't about titles. It's about legacy. It's about taking back the story. Wrestling is built on surprises. That's part of its magic. But in the modern era, where every arena has 1,000 cell phones, where every company jet can be tracked in real time, and where every wrestler's cousin seems to leak things to Twitter, real surprises feel extinct. And yet, somehow, WWE pulled off one of the most airtight, jaw-dropping, logic-defying stunts in its entire history. The return of Dean Ambrose, completely unannounced, in the middle of one of the most high-profile matches of the year. No leaks. No Reddit spoilers. Not even a hint. So how did they do it? To understand how this return happened in complete silence, we need to look at the machinery behind the moment, the people who stayed quiet, the layers of misdirection, and the methods used to outsmart even the most dedicated online detectives. Let's start with the basics. For a return like this to remain secret, 3 things must happen. The talent involved must stay silent. Internal WWE staff must operate in total lockdown. External tracking systems, flight paths, hotel reservations, backstage access, must be shut down or spoofed. And this return required all 3 to work in flawless unison. According to insiders, Dean Ambrose's involvement in Money in the Bank was not a plan-for-months scenario. That's how most WWE returns are handled. Slow burn, long-term strategy, maybe some red herrings to keep fans guessing. Not this time. This was a last-minute, high-risk, top-secret operation, intentionally so. Let's talk timeline. Just 3 weeks before MITB 2025, multiple reputable wrestling outlets reported that Jon Moxley had re-signed with AEW. It wasn't a rumor. It came from established reporters with track records. These weren't guys throwing darts, they had sources. AEW staff, lawyers, maybe even Moxley himself. But that's where the brilliance of this operation begins. That leak was likely the first decoy. If Dean Ambrose did, in fact, re-sign with AEW, it's possible he used that as cover. But if he didn't, if the contract was misrepresented on purpose, then it means the silence began with the man himself. Dean Ambrose has always been a bit of a ghost. In an industry filled with loud personalities, he's kept to himself. He doesn't use social media the way others do. He's not active in group chats or leaking to dirt sheets. That played directly in WWE's favor. He didn't drop hints. He didn't plant cryptic messages. He just stayed invisible. According to sources close to the production, Ambrose wasn't even flown into the MITB host city through a commercial airport. He reportedly arrived by private charter, booked under a non-wrestling alias, late the night before the event. WWE is known to do this for high-value secrets. They used similar methods during Edge's 2020 Royal Rumble return, and when Brock Lesnar came back in 2021. But this time, they added an extra layer. Hotel bookings were made under corporate aliases, and Ambrose wasn't even housed in the same building as the rest of the talent. A former production assistant revealed that he was driven to the arena in a black SUV with tinted windows at a separate loading dock entrance, typically reserved for construction crews. Even inside the building, he remained masked or hooded until just before the segment began. Here's the kicker: almost no one in the back knew he was coming. Usually, big returns are known by at least the key players in the ring, so they can choreograph safely, manage cues, and hit the right camera angles. But in this case, only 3 people reportedly knew: Triple H, the match producer, and Seth Rollins. That's it. Every other competitor in the match had been given instructions to improvise when a mystery entrant would join late. They assumed it was someone from NXT or a mid-card return like Ollie or Bo Dallas. They were told to keep the match flowing and make space for the final entrant. Only when Ambrose entered and began clearing house did the reality set in. Their reactions, captured live on TV, weren't just for show. That shock? That genuine hesitation? That wasn't acting. They had no idea who was coming. Even the announce team was reportedly kept in the dark until seconds before the reveal. Commentary had been prepped for a surprise entrant but weren't told who. Michael Cole's stunned silence when the camera finally caught Ambrose's face was 100% real. He wasn't reacting to a script, he was reacting to history unfolding. And then there's the fans. How did they avoid arena leaks? That's where WWE's new security measures came in. In recent months, WWE has overhauled its in-arena crew protocols. Staff are now required to sign digital NDAs that include real-time tracking of devices while on site. Security teams monitor backstage corridors and work areas to prevent unauthorized photos. Crew working at gorilla position must leave phones in lockboxes. These aren't rumors. They've been quietly tightening the screws for months. MITB 2025 was the first real test, and it worked. No one in the crowd captured his arrival early. No photos circulated of a hooded man backstage. No video caught a glimpse of him sneaking into the building. It was, in a word, flawless. And it raises a bigger question: has WWE just rewritten the rules on surprise returns? For years, fans have complained that nothing is sacred anymore. Everything leaks. Every major return gets spoiled hours, or days, in advance. But what we saw at MITB suggests that WWE has learned how to fight back. Not just with tighter policies, but with misdirection, timing, and information warfare. Even AEW didn't see this coming. Or did they? That's where things get murky. Some believe Tony Khan may have known something. The theory goes that Moxley negotiated a temporary release or creative sabbatical, allowing him to do one appearance for WWE, maybe as a one-off shock. That's extremely rare in pro wrestling but not unheard of in entertainment. The idea of talent appearing across brands in a shock and awe capacity is increasingly common in TV and film. But the more likely scenario is this: Ambrose and WWE made this happen without AEW's awareness, and whatever consequences come next, contractual or otherwise, were deemed worth it. Because what happened at MITB wasn't about legality. It was about seizing the moment. And WWE did just that. In an age where Twitter accounts like WrestleVotes or Fightful Select can spoil an entire pay-per-view in advance, WWE managed to pull off the greatest wrestling swerve of the decade. And here's why it worked: they didn't overhype it. There were no vignettes. No QR codes. No backstage whispers. They simply let the moment happen. In silence. In darkness. In complete control. And when the hoodie dropped, the industry changed. This wasn't just a return. It was a message. If WWE can bring back Dean Ambrose without a whisper leaking, then no one is safe from surprise. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, that's exactly what wrestling needs. Money in the Bank 2025 was stacked with talent. The card had already delivered standout performances, title changes, and crowd-pleasing moments. But everyone knew the main event, the men's MITB ladder match, was the final bullet in the chamber. The participants were a mix of rising stars, main event fixtures, and one unannounced mystery slot. Fans had spent weeks speculating who that final entrant would be, but as the 6 confirmed competitors made their entrances, it became clear, the 7th spot was being held for something big. The match began at a fever pitch. Ricochet, as always, launched into immediate aerial chaos. LA Knight brought the energy and the charisma, taunting the crowd and slamming bodies onto ladder rungs. Finn Balor, fresh off another failed title run, worked like he had something to prove. Carmelo Hayes and Bronson Reed added new blood and power to the mix. Santos Escobar looked more focused than ever. It was fast. Aggressive. Physical. Within minutes, bodies were strewn across ringside. Ricochet dove off a ladder into a crowd of 3. Reed bulldozed Knight through a barricade. Carmelo Hayes springboarded onto a suspended ladder to nearly unhook the briefcase in the opening 5 minutes. The crowd was red hot. Then something strange happened. As the match moved into its second act, the camera pulled back, wide shot, arena overview. You could hear the crowd reacting to something the broadcast hadn't caught yet. Not a pop. Not a cheer. A murmur. It was coming from the far side of the arena. The camera cut again. Security guards stepped aside, almost deliberately. A figure in a dark gray hoodie emerged, moving fast. No entrance music. No pyro. Just shadows and silence. Commentary stopped talking. No one had a clue what was happening. The figure vaulted the barricade like he'd done it 1,000 times. Didn't pause. Didn't grandstand. Walked directly to the nearest ladder at ringside and pulled out a chair. Then came the first strike. Finn Balor turned around and ate steel to the face. Instant reaction from the crowd. Shock turned to eruption. Ricochet took a boot to the midsection and was launched into a ladder. Carmelo Hayes got dropped on his neck. The camera zoomed in, and finally, you saw it. The hoodie slipped back. Dean Ambrose. No commentary. Just raw noise from the crowd. The next 90 seconds were a blur of violence. Ambrose dismantled everyone. He didn't move like someone who had been gone for 5 years. He moved like he never left. He suplexed LA Knight onto a ladder bridge. He cracked Santos Escobar across the spine with a chair. Then he turned to the center of the ring, briefcase above, ladders shattered, chaos around. And began to climb. It wasn't a slow, theatrical climb. It was a mission. As he neared the top, one man entered the ring, Seth Rollins. Rollins had been ringside earlier to provide commentary, claiming interest in scouting his next challenger. Whether he was meant to interfere or not is unclear. But he rolled into the ring and locked eyes with Ambrose from the bottom of the ladder. No words. No movement. Just a stare. And Ambrose, calm, mechanical, reached up and unhooked the briefcase. Crowd detonated. The bell rang. Ambrose sat at the top of the ladder, briefcase in one hand, staring down at Rollins like a man who had just reclaimed a kingdom he was never supposed to return to. Still no music. Still no commentary. Just 10 seconds of pure electricity. Then he climbed down, slowly, and walked back through the crowd. Exactly the way he entered. Let's break down what made this moment so powerful. First, the silence. Wrestling returns are usually bloated with theatrics. This one was bone dry. No graphics. No Titantron package. Not even his old theme song. It was as if WWE stripped away every barrier between character and audience. Second, the violence. This wasn't a run-in to wave at fans or drop one guy with a finisher. Ambrose came in like a street fighter. Like a man with a vendetta. And every single shot meant something. Third, the lack of celebration. No posing. No catchphrases. No pandering to the crowd. He didn't point to the briefcase. He didn't climb a turnbuckle. He didn't even smile. He just walked out, leaving behind wreckage and confusion. The booking here was brilliant. This wasn't a redemption arc. This wasn't nostalgia. This was a coup. Dean Ambrose didn't return to play the game. He broke into it, beat everyone inside, and walked away holding the one contract that guarantees power. Every other competitor looked stunned. Finn Balor rolled out of the ring holding his head, visibly rattled. Ricochet stared at the briefcase like it had been stolen from him. Santos Escobar shook his head in disbelief. And Seth Rollins? He never moved. Just kept staring. That final image, Rollins in the ring, Ambrose in the crowd, briefcase in hand, wasn't just symbolic. It was a signal. This wasn't the end of a match. It was the beginning of something much bigger. And everyone knew it. The bell hadn't even finished echoing when the internet exploded. Dean Ambrose's return wasn't just a wrestling moment, it was a cultural lightning strike. And in the seconds after he unhooked the Money in the Bank briefcase, the entire wrestling world scrambled to catch up. X, formerly known as Twitter, went from mildly active to full-on meltdown mode in under 2 minutes. The first clip to go viral wasn't from WWE's official account. It was a fan's shaky arena video, shot from the upper deck, showing a hooded figure hopping the barricade and laying out Carmelo Hayes. It got 1 million views in 30 minutes. Then came the screenshots. The hoodie. The ladder. The face. Tweets rolled in, Dean freaking Ambrose. This is not a drill. He left as Moxley. He returned as Ambrose. I need answers. Now. What the hell is going on? How is this real? Within an hour, hashtag Dean Ambrose, hashtag MITB, and hashtag Moxley were all trending in the top 5 worldwide. The timeline split into 2 camps. One was pure emotion, people reacting in real time, screaming into the digital void. The other was disbelief, confusion, and obsessive theorizing. How did WWE pull this off? Was this a one-night deal? Did he actually leave AEW? Where was the dirt sheet leak? The silence made the noise louder. On TikTok, reaction clips from fans in the arena hit millions of views. One video showed a grown man dropping to his knees the moment the hoodie came off. Another captured a group of teens in matching LA Knight shirts scream "No freaking way" and immediately flip into "yes freaking way" before dogpiling each other in disbelief. Influencer wrestling accounts, people with hundreds of thousands of followers, posted stunned reaction vids, some barely able to speak. One major YouTuber, known for hating on WWE booking, posted a 15-second short that simply said, "Triple H, I take it all back." That was nuclear. But the reaction wasn't confined to fans. Former and current wrestlers jumped online, equally floored. Bayley, that wasn't just a return. That was a freaking heist. Kevin Owens, did I just get worked while sitting backstage? Unreal. Renee Paquette, Ambrose's real-life wife and AEW broadcaster, posted a cryptic single emoji, an explosion. Even those inside AEW responded, subtly and not so subtly. One AEW star tweeted, "Damn. Business just picked up," and deleted it an hour later. Wrestling journalists scrambled. Prominent insiders admitted they had no idea this was coming. "I've never missed a move this badly," tweeted one. Total blindside. Respect to everyone who kept it airtight. But that admission set off a different kind of fire. Was this the moment that wrestling journalism lost its grip? Fans had come to expect every swerve to be spoiled, every surprise return to be leaked days in advance. But not this. The shock felt pure. Organic. And that made it rare. And it wasn't just diehard fans reacting. Sports media outlets that usually ignore wrestling lit up. ESPN Wrestling, Ambrose returns. MITB briefcase in hand. Business just changed. Bleacher Report, no leaks. No build. Just violence. WWE shocks the world with Dean Ambrose's MITB win. The Ringer. A lesson in controlled chaos. Wrestling's best-kept secret delivered the loudest moment of 2025. Even personalities outside the wrestling world weighed in. NFL players tweeted about it. An NBA player reposted the final Ambrose stare-down with Seth Rollins and added, "This is how I look at refs after a bad call." That kind of crossover buzz doesn't happen often. But it happened here. Why? Because the moment transcended wrestling. It was real-time storytelling. The unexpected invading the expected. The forbidden door being kicked in without a press release. For a generation raised on spoilers, this felt like witnessing magic. Something unplanned. Unfiltered. Larger than life. And that sentiment fueled the storm. Within 12 hours, the Money in the Bank return had amassed 7.5 million views on WWE's official clip, 20+ million hashtag impressions across X and TikTok, record high watch time for WWE's YouTube post-show Reddit threads with thousands of comments breaking down frame-by-frame footage. Conspiracy theories blossomed immediately. One popular thread claimed the man under the hoodie wasn't actually Dean Ambrose, it was a stand-in, and the real Ambrose will debut next week. Another theory suggested this was the beginning of a WWE AEW invasion storyline, complete with fan-made logos and fake leaked scripts. Most fans didn't care about the details. They were caught in the adrenaline rush of it all. They weren't analyzing. They were feeling. And that emotional tidal wave carried overnight into the next day. Morning sports talk shows mentioned it. YouTube thumbnails were plastered with Ambrose returns. Wrestlers who hadn't tweeted in months posted their disbelief. But something deeper was happening, too. The MITB return reignited fan faith in the element of surprise. People remembered what it felt like to watch without knowing everything. That feeling, the unfiltered rush of not knowing what's coming next, is rare in today's media world. And it made fans cling to it harder. Polls exploded. Was this the greatest return of the last decade? Where does this rank among MITB moments? Is Ambrose cashing in at SummerSlam, or are we being worked again? WWE capitalized on the moment without oversaturating it. They posted the clip. They let the noise grow organically. No press release. No corporate promo package. Just chaos and silence. And it worked. Because the fans did the rest. Dean Ambrose didn't trend. He erupted. Not because WWE told us to feel something, but because we actually did. Wrestling isn't about wins and losses. Not really. It's about moments. And one moment from Money in the Bank 2025 may come to define the next year of WWE, maybe longer. Not the briefcase grab. Not the chaos in the ring. Not even Dean Ambrose's return. It was what happened after. It was the stare. Dean Ambrose, standing on the top of the ladder, briefcase clutched in one hand, looked down. And at the bottom, like a shadow waiting under a guillotine, was Seth Rollins. They didn't speak. They didn't move. They didn't have to. Because that moment wasn't about theatrics. It was about history. The last time these two men stood in a ring like that, unfiltered, unguarded, it was 2014. The night Rollins drove a steel chair into Ambrose's spine and shattered the shield. That betrayal sent both men on diverging, violent, and deeply personal journeys. Rollins became the architect. The visionary. The world champion. Ambrose became the lunatic, then the rebel, than the outcast who walked away from it all. And now here they were again. A decade later. No weapons. No words. Just one look. That look spoke louder than any promo ever could. It said, "We're not finished." It said, "You know why I'm back." It said, "This is personal." What made the moment so powerful wasn't what was said, but what wasn't. WWE didn't try to overdirect it. The production team didn't cut to commentary. There were no backstage cutaways. Just that ladder, that ring, those two men, and years of weight behind their silence. Because these two weren't just rivals. They were brothers once. They debuted together. Rose together. Wrecked the roster together. Along with Roman Reigns, they built the Shield into the most dominant faction WWE had seen in years. Not since DX or Evolution had a unit felt so untouchable, so fused by identity. And then, with one chair shot, Rollins tore it apart. Ambrose never forgave him. Not really. Sure, they had moments of reunion. They held the tag titles together. They made peace. For a while. But you could always feel the tension underneath. That smoldering ember of betrayal never quite went out. So when Rollins appeared at ringside during the MITB match, nobody thought much of it. Just Seth doing Seth things, scouting, flexing, showboating. Maybe teasing his next feud. But when he slid into the ring at the end, and Ambrose saw him standing there, the temperature changed. This wasn't about scouting. It was about closure. Or maybe revenge. And the fact that Ambrose didn't swing on him, not even a flinch, was chilling. He didn't need to. He had already taken everything. He had come in uninvited, unannounced, and walked out with the most dangerous prize in wrestling. In front of the man who once betrayed him. In front of the man who may hold the very title he'll soon cash in on. There was no reason to speak. Not yet. But the implication hung heavy in the air. Rollins, to his credit, didn't attack. Didn't raise a mic. Didn't even blink. He just stared up at Ambrose, eyes fixed, posture still, like he knew what was coming. He's been champion long enough to know when he's just become the hunted. And Ambrose didn't celebrate. Didn't smile. Didn't nod. He simply stepped down the ladder, walked past Rollins like he didn't exist, and exited through the crowd. No pyro. No curtain call. No curtain at all. Just a cold exit. A message left in silence. And it hit everyone watching in the chest. Because it wasn't just an acknowledgement of rivalry. It was a resurrection of purpose. Dean Ambrose didn't return to make friends or relive the past. He returned to collect something. Something he believes he was always owed. And if the look he gave Rollins is any indication, it starts with him. There's a deeper layer, too. Rollins, for years, has lived with that betrayal. He's reinvented himself half a dozen times. Monday Night Messiah. Drip God. Visionary. World Champion. He's rewritten his image so thoroughly that many fans have forgotten the opportunistic villain he once was. But Ambrose hasn't. He remembers. He remembers every super kick. Every fake apology. Every smug promo. And now he's back with a weapon Rollins can't dodge, uncertainty. Because that's the power of the MITB briefcase. It's not just a contract. It's a sword hanging over every champion's head. And when the man holding it is unpredictable by nature, that threat becomes unbearable. Rollins will go to bed wondering if tonight's the night. He'll cut a promo not knowing if Ambrose is backstage, ready to strike. He'll win a match and check the shadows before he lifts his title. Because Ambrose isn't a normal threat. He's a ticking clock. And Rollins heard it start ticking the moment their eyes met. This stare down wasn't just a callback. It was a promise. That whatever peace existed between them is over. That the Shield isn't reuniting, it's imploding one last time. And this time, there's no coming back from it. Dean Ambrose didn't come back in a vacuum. To understand why this moment worked, and why it had to happen now, you need to look at the landscape surrounding it. Not just WWE's roster. Not just its storytelling. But the entire machine: creative leadership, backstage trust, public perception, and competition. Because this wasn't a coincidence. This was a calculated disruption at a time when WWE needed exactly that. Let's rewind. 3 years ago, WWE was at a crossroads. Vince McMahon's exit from power in 2022 shifted the entire foundation. For the first time in decades, the product was no longer filtered through his lens. Creative reins passed to Paul "Triple H" Levesque, someone who didn't just understand the wrestling business but had lived it. And right away, the tone began to shift. Promos loosened up. Match time increased. Characters became more layered, less cartoonish. Long-term storytelling made a comeback. NXT call-ups weren't instantly buried. Even the pacing of weekly shows felt more deliberate, less frantic. But something was still missing. Shock. Unpredictability. That electricity fans crave when they don't know what's going to happen next. That's where this return fits in. WWE didn't just bring back a popular name. They timed the return with surgical precision. Look at the data. By early 2025, viewership across Raw and SmackDown had plateaued. Not tanked, WWE was still performing well, but the growth curve had slowed. The buzz around Cody Rhodes' title run was cooling. Roman Reigns had stepped away post-WrestleMania. New stars like Braun Breaker and Trick Williams were rising, but they hadn't yet lit the mainstream on fire. WWE needed a jolt. Not just a nostalgic pop. A real disruption. Someone who could shake the foundation of both the roster and the audience. Enter Dean Ambrose. This wasn't a forced comeback or a pre-scheduled nostalgia tour. This was strategic chaos. It dropped in a moment where everything felt balanced, maybe too balanced. A well-timed earthquake. And here's the key. It wasn't just about shocking fans. It was about forcing everyone in the locker room to wake up. Because now the game has changed. There's a reason this return was kept secret from almost everyone, even other wrestlers. WWE wanted the moment to resonate beyond the screen. They wanted the entire company, on and off camera, to feel it. And they succeeded. Sources backstage say the locker room was legitimately stunned. One veteran reportedly asked, "Are we working with AEW now?" Another newer talent, according to one insider, thought the segment was an angle that got hijacked. But the shock is only half the story. The other half is trust. Triple H has spent the past 2 years rebuilding trust with both talent and fans. Under Vince, surprise returns often felt mechanical. Pop in, cut a catchphrase, get pinned 2 weeks later. Rinse and repeat. Triple H flipped that script. He doesn't bring people back unless there's a long arc in play. Just look at examples like Bray Wyatt's 2022 return, or DIY's main roster reunion, or the slow burn Bloodline saga. Nothing happens by accident anymore. So when Dean Ambrose walked back into WWE at MITB 2025, it wasn't just about the pop. It was about reigniting the fuse on a storyline that could redefine the main event picture heading into WrestleMania season. And the timing couldn't be better. Cody Rhodes, after a hard-fought title defense, is running out of credible challengers who feel fresh. Seth Rollins is still holding the World Heavyweight Championship but lacks a long-term rival with history and weight. Gunther is dominating on SmackDown but needs a narrative spark for SummerSlam. Dean Ambrose fits into all of these stories, and doesn't need a build to be believable. He walks in and everyone instantly knows the stakes. That kind of storytelling currency is rare. And WWE cashed it in at exactly the right time. There's also a more existential reason for this return. Dean Ambrose is a bridge. He represents a connection between eras. Between the scripted, micromanaged WWE of the 2010s and the grittier, freer AEW generation. Between the ruthless aggression era and the modern hybrid indie athlete superstars. He's the kind of character who can walk into any locker room and immediately be both an outsider and a measuring stick. For the audience, that matters. He's not a legacy act. He's not a charity spot. He's a threat. And that raises the level of everyone around him. Now think about the fans. Wrestling audiences have changed. They're smarter. Faster. More plugged in than ever before. They follow talent across promotions. They analyze contract expirations. They predict returns 6 months in advance. They've seen every swerve. So when something truly surprises them, they reward it. They invest. They talk. They stay. WWE knew that. They didn't try to hype it with vignettes. They didn't try to sell it ahead of time. They let it happen. Quietly. Brutally. Perfectly. Because they knew that in today's media-saturated world, the loudest moment is often the one you don't hear coming. Dean Ambrose returned because WWE needed a disruptor. Because the roster needed a wild card. Because the audience needed to believe that anything could still happen. And now that he's back? Nobody knows what's coming next. And that's exactly the point. While the WWE universe was losing its mind in Chicago, 900 miles south in Jacksonville, the AEW locker room sat stunned. Jon Moxley, real name Jonathan Good, had just appeared on WWE television under his old moniker, Dean Ambrose, and walked away with a guaranteed world title shot. No warning. No tweets. No word from the man himself. For AEW, it was more than a headline. It was a rupture. Because if one of their core pillars could walk into WWE with no build-up, no goodbye, and no red tape, that wasn't just shocking. It was destabilizing. Let's go back to the basics. As far as the public knew, Jon Moxley had re-signed with AEW earlier this year. That extension was announced through typical wrestling press channels. Moxley was said to be committed to the company long-term and focused on mentoring the next generation. He was active on AEW TV just weeks ago, tagging with Wheeler Yuta, bleeding buckets in a no-DQ match, and cutting promos that made no mention of any looming absence. There was no injury angle. No last match send-off. No break in continuity. And yet, there he was, climbing a ladder on WWE programming, unhooking the Money in the Bank briefcase. So what gives? Was the AEW deal real? If it was, how did WWE not just break kayfabe, but possibly legal ground? Sources close to AEW leadership are, as of now, staying silent. Tony Khan has issued no comment. Moxley hasn't posted on social media. AEW's legal team hasn't filed any injunctions, or if they have, they're doing it in total secrecy. But there are 3 possible scenarios playing out behind the scenes. The renegotiated release theory. Moxley was under AEW contract but negotiated a temporary out. A one-time return to WWE for a pre-approved, undisclosed angle. This would be the cleanest legal path, though extremely rare. Wrestling companies are not in the habit of loaning talent to direct competitors. If this happened, it means WWE and AEW communicated at some level, either through legal channels or quiet intermediaries. This would suggest a moment of unprecedented professionalism between the two companies. The smokescreen theory. The AEW contract news was planted either by AEW or Moxley himself, as a misdirection. The extension may have been offered, but never signed. Moxley may have been working without a contract, or with a flexible agreement that allowed him to exit at will. This theory has legs given Moxley's well-known desire for creative freedom. He's never played politics. He's walked away from millions before. Why not again? The breach theory. The darkest and most explosive possibility, that Moxley was still under AEW contract and broke it. That he accepted a better offer from WWE, made the jump, and now AEW is scrambling behind closed doors to figure out their next legal step. If true, this opens the door to lawsuits, public relations chaos, and a new kind of wrestling war where no handshake is sacred. All three scenarios are plausible. All three come with risk. But what they share is this: no one expected this, not even the company that helped make Moxley a legend over the past 5 years. Because AEW wasn't just Moxley's home. He was their warhorse. The guy who said yes when others said no. When injuries hit, he filled the card. When backstage fights broke out, he showed up and led by example. When AEW needed stability, he bled for it, literally and figuratively. He didn't just represent the AEW style. He defined it. So is sudden silence now? It's deafening. Wrestlers backstage at AEW are reportedly split. Some are furious, feeling betrayed. Others are confused, thinking this may be a swerve or shared angle. Though no one has evidence to support that. A few are simply waiting for more info, still unsure what they watched last night was real. But for AEW's top brass, this isn't just about optics. It's about precedent. If Moxley left without warning, what does that signal to others? Could WWE make another call next month and lure away another big name under similar circumstances? Could this be the start of a new wave of talent movement, more aggressive and secretive than anything seen since the Monday Night Wars? The timing is also brutal. AEW is heading into All in London in just weeks. A massive international stadium show. Moxley was expected to play a key role. His name sold tickets. If he's gone for good, that void will be felt both financially and emotionally. And for fans? They're torn. Some feel betrayed. He told us he'd never go back, one Reddit post read, and now he's carrying their briefcase? Others are more forgiving. Let the man work where he wants, said a top-liked tweet. He gave AEW everything. If he wants to go back and make history, I'm here for it. But the trust has cracked. Because Jon Moxley built his AEW identity on truth. On transparency. On walking the walk. Now, with no promo, no farewell, and no explanation, he's walked right back into the system he once condemned. Or maybe that's the point. Maybe this isn't betrayal. Maybe it's strategy. Maybe Moxley, Ambrose, saw something in WWE that wasn't there 5 years ago. A new landscape. A new creative vision. A chance to do what he couldn't do before, play the game his way, on his terms. And maybe that's all this is. Not a defection. Not a power play. But a man reclaiming his name in the company where it was first built and broken. Still, questions remain. Will he return to AEW? Was this a one-night deal? Has the forbidden door been obliterated or simply ignored? Right now, no one has answers. Only speculation. But here's what we do know: AEW has lost something more than a wrestler. They've lost control of the narrative. Because in the war for wrestling's soul, it's not just about contracts and promos. It's about moments. And Dean Ambrose just created one that belongs to WWE.